The Concio, in the Republic of Venice, was the General Assembly of freemen from which the Doge was elected. It was in use between 742 and 1423 before it lost its function when the Serrata del Maggior Consiglio passed power into the hands of the aristocratic class. Interior history. The origin and the conquest of power for the election of the Doge. The origin of the popular assembly is uncertain. Assemblies of free men were already widespread in the 6th–7th centuries in various cities of maritime Venice, for the election of local magistrates, or tribunes, although the Venetian traditions called for a general meeting of the Venetians. In 697, the appointment of the first Doge, Paolo Lucio Anafesto, should have been the prerogative of the Byzantine emperor, through the Exarchate of Ravenna. The first actual election was probably that of the third Doge, also Ipato, when in 726 the Venetians, rejecting measures imposed by iconoclasts of the Byzantine Emperor Leo III the Isaurian, chose the leader autonomously. Upon the death of Orso, however, the Byzantines replaced the government with a ducal court's annual magistri militum until 742, when the emperor formally granted the populate the right to elect the Doge. The power of the assembly had yet to be precisely defined, and John Deacon reports that even in 887, when former Doge Giovanni Participazio II had to reaffirm that it was the responsibility of the People's Assembly to elect the Doge. The struggle for power. Despite the power of choice right now, it was up to Concio. Over time the dukes tried to prevail on the assembly, resolutely turning the monarchy to be elective and hereditary. The strategy chosen was to circumvent the electoral power of Concio, associating the throne a co-regent, also called co-dux, selected from children or close relatives, which could at the time of death of the Doge owner automatically succeed him, being already on the throne and thus in a position of strength. It is unclear the role that the assembly had at the time of the coronation of co-regenti, and if it was up to it, however, some form of confirmation of their appointment. However, between the 8th and 11th centuries, there were at least 15 co-regenti that were associated with throne, and of these, only 6 could actually happen to your colleague, and the 28 successive doges, 14 ended deposited with blinding, cutting of the beard and hair for scarring, or forced to tonsure, or killed in the riots, while 4 others preferred to abdicate. This chaotic phase found a solid place in 1032 when the Concio, refusing to recognize the coronation of Domenico Orsolino, appointed in his place Flabenico Domenico, while enacting the first law of the constitutional republic, with which forbade forever practice of the association to the throne, went off in the perpetual Orseoli from the government, and is flanked at the Doge 2 ducal councillors, because they constantly saw Vegliassero the work, the training of municipal institutions and the loss of power of Concio, now become in effect the supreme arbiter of the state. The Concio was faced with the need to create permanent organisms are able to continuously meet the progressive depletion of the ducal power. At the same time, the ancient noble families, no longer committed to contending for a hereditary sovereign, began to form, along with other prominent families, a class of aristocrats able to influence and direct the city politics. In 1143, he was thus created a first Consilium Sapientium, appointed by and responsible to support the Doge permanently in government. The new communal form of the state was sanctioned by the appearance of words Venetium commune documents, but the first real step that marked the beginning of the decline of the power of Concio occurred in 1172. The Consilium Sapientium became the Great Council, was entrusted with the ordinary legislative power, while being on the other hand, decided to entrust the election ducal 7 elected by voters. A second shot was then 6 years later, in 1178, when the Concio lost further control over the appointment of the Doge. For that, when in fact the 7 electors from this nominated no longer directly choose the Doge. They are in fact now raffled for, with the task of appointing the 40 ducal actual voters. The Council of 40, which sold out the task, then remained in power as an assembly of government and Supreme Court. In 1207 also the appointment of members of the Great Council was entrusted to a small group of 3 voters, then increased to 7 in 1230. Obvious consequence of these choices was the aristocratic part of the increase in municipal bodies. The status quo of popular power supported by an aristocratic power is cracked at 1286, when 2 attempts, rejected, to foreclose access to the Great Council families popular, marked the opening of hostilities between the 2 factions. Rejected again in 1296, but with difficulty, the proposed Serrata was finally approved at the urging of the Doge Pietro Gradenigo on 28 February 1296. Although in 1300 and in 1310 the plots of Marin Bocconio and Tiepolo attempted a restoration of the people, the aristocratic form of the state was now a reality. The abolition, private being any real power, the Concio people survived only as a formal meeting at dell'acclamazione. The new Doge was elected. The fact still presented the crowd with a ritual, phrased costruì il nostro signor, il Doge, che piace. He is our Lord, the Doge, if you like. The meeting was useless anyway and officially abolished only in 1423, but the custom of ritual request for approval to the people remained in use until the fall of the Republic in 1797.